but they were Christians. They went to church. You go like, let's run let's go to Auschwitz and work and kill X number of Jewish people, and then let's go to church, and celebrate God. Somehow religion and teachings are not enough to shield human beings from these really nefarious actions that get undertaken.
Yeah,
which is true around the world, right? Doesn't matter. Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, atheists, agnostics, Muslims and Christians, the two largest religions in the world, are like equal in terms of just the willingness to kill.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that also has to do with less about the inclination, but also more so because,
Are there some groups or religions that are more and or less responsible for war?
That's a controversial topic.
Wait, what makes it controversial? Because I said religion?
Not necessarily. I think it's you choosing a particular group in society, or you choosing a particular group to associate with war and kind of causation. I think that's what makes it controversial. But I would say it depends who you ask, and it depends on their knowledge.
Okay.
I think it depends also on the environment that they grew up in, kind of the ideals and the mentality that their families grew up with. Because like politics and government, everybody sees things differently, no matter how it actually happened. So there's always an alternative narrative.
Okay. All right. Listen, man, let's go to Griffin then. Speaking of, dude, you see, you're a Christian. All right. You're really Christian? What's that mean for you?
I truly believe that Jesus Christ came, lived on the earth, lived a perfect life, and died for my sins so that I could be reconciled to God. And that's like the core of my character and how I treat people and how I view the world. And when you're asking the question about, certain religions being the cause of war, I think that, for the sake of being a Christian, I think that there's been a lot of situations where people use the Bible to justify going to war, and maybe abuse the Bible. And so I don't think that that's a reflection of God's character. But I also can't sit here and ignore what they did.
The Germans, and then, the French and the Poles and the Italians and everybody who, really helped participate in the Holocaust, they were all Christians, right? I mean, they weren't Christians in the way I would identify a Christian. Just like Busch Light, I wouldn't call it a beer. So, okay, so they're not Christians in the way I would consider Christians, but they were Christians. They went to church. You go like, let's run let's go to Auschwitz and work and kill X number of Jewish people, and then let's go to church, and celebrate God. Nothing has ever come close to that. There's nothing in human history that in a single century, a single religion has been responsible for so much death. I don't have a bone to pick with Christianity. I'm just out of deep curiosity. How do you?
When I read the Bible, and specifically the teachings of Jesus, I don't see the justification of going to war and killing people. And a lot of those countries that you're referring to are people that went to war to have more power and to have more land and to have more control. And that's the opposite of what Jesus teaches.
It seems to be, but not to a lot of people. Hang on, that's your opinion on that.
That's what the Bible says.
Well, I know, but it's the way you interpret the Bible. But other people who also read the Bible, they see it obviously very different. Like Donald Trump had a group of pastors lay their hands on him and pray for him right before he called for war to bomb people in Iran.
That's horrible.
Okay, so that's your take. But there are other people. Are you Christian?
Yeah.
How do you make sense of that? Here.
I mean,
obviously. By the way, hang on really fast. I do want to give you the option to say, I don't know, man, that's above my pay grade. But go ahead, give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, it is above my pay grade, but like, it's pretty messed up. But at the same time, like, you can say that about a whole lot of other religions. You can say pretty similar things.
No, very, very true. We're going to get to those in a second. I'm just hitting this one.
I mean, you shouldn't kill people, but at the end of the day, like, just because Christians are responsible for a lot of deaths, you can't really put any blame on them the same way you can't put any blame on everyone else.
Yes, so somehow religion and teachings are not enough to shield human beings from these really nefarious actions that get undertaken.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is true around the world, right? Doesn't matter if Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, atheists, agnostics. It's
Similar to Griffin, I feel like just because people are Christian and they do it doesn't mean, like, for example, Jesus did not advocate for that, and also for people who killed Jewish individuals, Jesus died because, and he was crucified for being called the King of the Jews. So it's kind of like that. Just because people do it and they're Christian doesn't mean that that's what Christianity is. The same way, for me as a black man, if I were to go and kill somebody, you can't say, oh, all black people going to do that just because I decided out of my own power to do that, because, of course, God gives us the free will to do what we please. Yeah. And then just because I claim a title doesn't mean that that whole title does the same thing. Same way I'm not going to call you racist just because you're white.
Yeah, okay. Or you wouldn't call me anti-Christian or anti-religious just because I'm asking you all to answer this question, because I'm not that either. Here, go to the next slide. In the 20th century, Hatan, Muslims were responsible for like 7 to 12 million deaths. How do you make sense of that?
Yeah, I think...
And most of them are killing other Muslims, by the way.
I think that falls very much under the same kind of things that they were saying, is in the same way that like a lot of, Christian scripture has been misinterpreted. A lot of the Quran has also been, misused by a lot of different groups to justify different acts. So I think it goes in the same vein.
Yeah, it's the same. It seems to me the same. In the Christian Bible, it doesn't say Christians can't kill other Christians. In the Quran, it definitively says, doesn't it? That Muslims can't kill other Muslims. But many Muslims seem to miss that passage. All right, so in the 21st century, thus far, the first 25 years, about 5 million people, combatants and civilians, have died. And I should make the argument, I should say, that most people that die in modern wars are civilians. So when we are bombing Iran, are you thinking about this? As we're bombing Iran, most people who are dying are civilians in Iran. They're not soldiers, right? They're civilians. And so that's a really... There might be a reason to think about it. Your government, because you're all 4 of you are Americans, right? U.S. citizens. So your government is bombing another country, but most of the people who are dying are civilians, just like people in this classroom. So there would be an argument to, hey, you might want to follow what's going on, because, we, the citizens, are killing other citizens, so it's a thought. Okay, but anyway, I mean, I don't want to just jump off of that, but go to the next slide. Okay, soldiers from majority Christian nations have killed about 2 million people in the 21st century. So the 20th century was a really unique century of major wars and conflicts and so on, right? And it just so happened that Christianity was very much kind of leading the way in so much death and destruction. But in the 21st, go one more. But Muslims are now equal with Christians in terms of killing people. So, if Muslims had done what Christians did in the 20th century, then that'd be an extreme amount of people. So Muslims have shown that they are, in the 21st century anywhere, just as equally inclined to engage in armed conflict and kill other people, most of whom are civilians. Right. Do you ever thought about that as a Muslim? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I definitely.
what's going? Hang on, I want to be very specific. Like where we're headed now, that whereas Muslims and Christians, the two largest religions in the world, are like equal in terms of just the willingness to kill.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that also has to do with less about the inclination, but also more so because, the Middle East as a region has been very, unstable for since the beginning of the 21st century. And, it's a region that is majority Muslim. And so I think that probably has a large role to play in that.
Do you know what he just said about the Middle East, about Muslim areas of the world, but Middle East in particular, has been very unstable for the past 25 to 50 years. Do you have any explanation in your mind as to why that is? Do you have an under, because people say, oh, there's a lot of conflict in the Middle East. Oh, it's unstable. So wait, because why? Do you have an answer to that? You can not have an answer. I wouldn't expect you to have an answer, but.
I wouldn't expect me to have an answer either. I would say that I don't know enough about the situation, but I would also say, well, first let me ask, are the conflicts both internal and external?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, so I would say that a possibility could be resources, maybe a conflict of power.
Okay, all right.
But other than that, I don't know.
Okay, all right. So conflict over power, like people, if something's going on with a shift in power. And then that makes me say, like, who are the people, what's the power, and what are they fighting over, right? And then we'll go to Griffin.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think the power is oil. The power lies in oil,
Hold it closer.
and the wealth that is derived from oil, I think, has been one of the predominant factors in instability from foreign governments and internally in the Middle East.
Okay, all right. And then you got to say, like, okay, wait, how does that get played out, right? Okay, Griffin.
Yeah, I just had a thought. So we say soldiers from majority Christian nations have killed about 2 million people in the 21st century. And so I just think it's important to consider the fact that the people making these calls to go to war, I'll just talk about the U.S. I don't believe that the people making those decisions are going, yeah, this is what God wants me to do, is to go to war, to do that, at least modern day. I would think that it's mostly about money, power, and control. And so, we can put the Christian nation label on it, but I don't think they're necessarily going to war for because they believe that that's God's will for them.
No, for sure, not at all.
Yeah.
Even in the 20th century, that wasn't the case.
So
all the killing that was happening wasn't it's like onward Christian soldier stuff. It wasn't that. Nobody's killing in the name. Even Muslims are not killing in the name of Allah. I mean, sometimes some suicide bomber will say, Allahu Akbar. They'll say something, right, to in the name of Allah. But state actors are not doing that. Yeah.
I just thought it was important to think about that and not to just put that label on it and think that that's why they were going to war.
Well, yeah. No, but what's interesting is how easily, and I think one of the reasons we have classes like this, like Social 19 or the class that follows this class, Knowing Right from Wrong, you take classes like this to wrestle with these ideas. So when you get in certain positions of decision making, you can see your decision making from many different perspectives, and like, how is that?
Yeah.
But you sound like a really, I can feel your energy. You sound like a very thoughtful Christian.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, and so okay, but when push comes to shove, and how does that inform decisions that you make, right? That's in the end what it's about, right?